Okay, here we are, hour number 3. It's Monday. We're going to do our Monday Fukushima update for you, and before you turn away, don't, because there's an awful lot happening that's really important, and I don't want you to miss it because you need to know. Even if you live in Africa, it doesn't matter. You need to understand what nuclear power can and will do to this planet, and that is essentially destroy a lot of it, if not all of it. And time will tell about that, because most of the nuclear plants operating now are operating past their projected life expectancy. They keep getting extensions, and the pipes keep getting rustier, and things keep abrading. It's not a good situation. And if you look at the top of Rents today, you'll see, first of all, David D's wonderful art piece on that horrific attack on the USS Liberty by that wonderful little democracy in the Middle East, our ally, Israel, 1967. All right, let's not forget the Liberty. But look down in the center column, latest Fukushima updates. All right? Now, the first story is really another one that just leaves you scratching your head. How can these things be going on and not make the mainstream media? Well, the answer is there's a cover-up. In England, they call it a D-notice. All right? Now, the headline is simple. NOAA. All right? You know, NOAA, National Oceanographic and Aeronautics Administration. Beaches full of dead baby sea lions off California. Well, the beaches are actually on California, but you get the picture. Many aborted fetuses. Garbage bags filled with animals along the coast. Carts in freezers overflowing with dead bodies. And yes, this could someday apply to human bodies. One official said, pollution, now get this lying SOB. I wish I knew who he was. Official, pollution may well have had an effect. We deliberately didn't test for it. Should that guy have his butt kicked out the door tomorrow? Yeah, I'd give him notice right now. Pollution may well have had an effect. Well, what kind of pollution, sir or madam, are you talking about? Radioactive pollution? I doubt it. The lie is on. And then we deliberately didn't test for it. These are quotes. Who the hell are these people? They're part of the enemy. And there's a color picture of dead sea lions. Just disgusting. Very, very sad. Now here's the story, June 7th, from the Venice newspaper in Venice, California. The sad reality, this is a headline, of starving, dying sea lions on Venice. A breeze catches the scent of dead, rotting sea lion. The pungent stench lingers. It's hard to ignore. The dead sea pups are small enough to be tied up tight in black plastic garbage bags, but the larger adult sea lions lay right out in the open. So says somebody named Nick in Heel the Bay, it's quite frightening. They wash up on our beaches weak and sickened, and in many cases dying, which is what you see in the bags. The National Geographic chimes in with number of starving sea lions in California unprecedented, raising questions about what the future holds after 3 years of mass strandings. More than 3,000 starving sea lion pups have washed up, and those are the lucky ones. The situation on California's Channel Islands, where more than 90% of the U.S. sea lion population congregates to breed and nurse young, is even worse. The few pups that have enough strength to leave the rookeries and make it to the mainland get recorded as strandings, says NOAA's Mark Lowry. There's a lot of death out there, but nowhere do you see the word that begins with the letter R. Or the letter F for Fukushima, for that matter. So what we have are stories here that all begin with the letter L. Lies. They're all lying. And I hope some of you out there are a little bit perturbed by what I'm reporting here. All right? Now, if that isn't enough for you, government expert. Well, right away you got to raise an eyebrow or two. West Coast will soon be hit. Now, how many years have we been telling you this stuff? First of all, about the sea lions and sea life in general. All of it. Sea lions are at the top of the food chain. They're getting the most concentrated doses in the fish they eat. We've been telling you this for over 4 years, 4.5 years now. Yoichi Shimatsu is on with us, of course. Yoichi was one of the first to say it on this program, but a week or two after Fukushima went up. Dana Durnford is on with us as well. We'll bring him on in just a minute. And he was certainly a man who put his life on the line to prove all this. We'll talk to him about his trip, just concluded. So here's the story. Government expert, now get ready. Get ready, you realtors. West Coast will soon be hit by 800 trillion becquerels of Fukushima cesium-137. That's nearly equal the amount of total fallout deposited on Japan by the Fukushima catastrophe. The West Coast will soon be hit by 800 trillion becquerels of Fukushima cesium-137, nearly equal to the amount of fallout deposited on all Japan. Levels in the Pacific in the water are, quote, higher than expected. Another quote, main body of surface plume has reached the west coast of the U.S. It never slowed down while crossing the ocean, contrary to predictions. All right, well, again, we told you all of this. The North Pacific current runs about 12 knots. That stuff was coming, no slowing down, and it did. And it's piled up against the West Coast now. It's been here, it's just piling up to levels that they've never seen before. And it's going to continue to pile up for centuries to come. You think there's going to be anything left on the ocean in terms of marine life? Think again. You people will have lovely ocean views as you visit your oncologist and come home to admire them. But that's going to be about it. All right, first off, let's welcome back Yoichi Shimatsu. Yoichi, how are you?
Oh, I'm okay. I'm in Thailand, but you know, some frightening sights. I was in Bangkok just a few days ago, and as I was coming to the airport toward Bangkok, I saw some big clouds coming in, and there was one cloud that looked just like stuff you see in Fukushima, sort of a large mushroom cloud connected to a very long extended cloud, very strange light. Mm-hmm. So, you know, the spring currents bringing waters from the Pacific Trench, or the Philippine Trench, to the coast of southern China, Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, and finally, you know, they tend to go southward, finally toward Bangkok. So we're seeing this massive spread of radiation in the atmosphere and in the currents, in the fog that's generated, clouds that are generated. So I do believe the entire upper atmosphere is weakening. I remember I told you about 6 months after the Fukushima incident, sort of an eye of God in the sky over the ocean, which was visible from Khao San Road, sort of the hippie road in where a lot of backpackers like to stay in Khao San. Thousands of people were just flabbergasted by the sight. Were just like stood still. I wish I had my camera on me, watching all the people just looking at this awesome sight. But it indicates the upper atmosphere is starting to really go. When that goes, we're going to have not just weather problems. We're going to have a lot of other problems, like oxygen problems in our environment. Never mind carbon dioxide. It may be really the final extermination event on the horizon.
Yeah.
The other thing about this estimate that we heard of 800, the trillions of becquerels coming across the West Coast, I think that's the growth underestimate, off by 100 to 1,000 times, that actually it's a very low estimate. There's two sources of radiation. One
okay, we got
water,
Yoshi, we got some beeps.
Yeah.
See, do you hear beeps on your phone? Beep, beep, beep.
No.
Okay, maybe a low battery. I don't know.
Sort of
interference.
No, the battery's fully charged. This is
okay.
something. I got to get a new phone, I guess. It was fried. I've been flying through Asia.
Yeah. All
so
right.
I think basically circuits in my phone are getting burned out.
All right, we'll get along with it. 800 trillion becquerels you think is way too low?
I think that's I think it's a pretty gross underestimate. It's from Fukushima University, which is very much connected and funded by Tokyo Electric Power. So I believe it would be much higher if we count the runoff, which is fresh water floating across the. Most of it floats in the U.S. because it does merge into the North Pacific Current. But the other huge source of radiation hitting the United States and Canada and the Arctic are the storms that are coming out of the Pacific, out of the Philippine Trench. And from what I can tell, I can discern, let's say, or deduct, is that's from the solid radioactive material that sank into the trench, Japan Trench, and over the years has moved down into the Philippine Trench, causing these unprecedented numbers of typhoons heading to Fukushima, and those typhoons moving into the Bering Strait, and then circling around, hitting Alaska, the Pacific Northwest, Canada, the Arctic. So that would be a whole additional amount, and that a lot of that, unfortunately, I believe, is containing a lot of plutonium and tritium, because from what I could tell from my readings, that very high-level war-grade plutonium that was being processed into warhead material in these underground secret labs at coal burning and oil burning plants in Hirono and south of there. Two major plants. A lot of that material, from my readings, was dumped into the ocean. The trail leads to fishing ports, and therefore to barges, which were dumped in the Pacific. So, what's hitting the West Coast, I believe, is going to be much larger than they're suggesting, than all estimates.
Well, it makes sense.
It's going to be far worse.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, in the coming years.
Sense. Yeah.
And let's say next year, the year after, because these huge storms
it's piling
are
up
through, and they're increasing.
Yeah, it's piling
in other
up.
Words, there's more and more surging out of the deep sea coming over to the U.S., and which accounts for these massive numbers of aborted fetuses from sea lions. And it is happening in humans because, again, now the June report, the mid-year report finally came out from the Health Ministry, which tabulates the death rate, and we've seen this year another record drop in population. Another record drop in population, and a lot of that was aborted fetuses like we see among foreigners, among women in Hong Kong and Singapore who went to Japan just for a short time and suffered serious embryonic damage, embryos that no longer look like even mammals, much less humans, but look more like reptilian or amphibian species, coming out of these women. Japan birth rate sinking to another record low at the fourth year in a row since 3/11, and now the death rate also surging by another 4,000 some deaths per annum. This is after annual increases after the 2011 Fukushima disaster. So death rate, leading cause, cancer. Cancers. And the second is heart failure. So again, very much in line with a major radiation event, particularly since this cohort, this group should be healthier. These are people who did not endure, let's say, the war years over the wartime period as teenagers. They might have been born into war, but after the war, their diets and healthcare were radically improved. So there should not be this stunning another fourth year in a row rise in the death rate and a drop in the birth rate. So what you say, what's happening in seals could be happening in humans. It is, and we know in California, a lot of thyroid damage to to infants, young children, a lot of miscarriages of late, and so forth. A real crisis onshore in California in the human population. So, yeah, the kill-off is definitely underway. It's not just begun. It is well underway now, and perhaps unstoppable. So this is, and people have got to really pay attention to this now. There's no more hiding. You can run, but you cannot. You just can't. You can't run anymore. There's no place to run. People have got to.
No, you got it right. You got it right.
Yeah.
All right, let's.
If you don't face up, you're just. It's basically a horrifying. It's going to be a horrifying death. There are ways to avert that. There are ways to take precautions.
Yeah.
The government is not doing its job of telling people.
No, I'm not telling people
anything. We have
anything.
been for 4 years consistently.
Yeah, we'll continue.
Yeah,
we'll continue. All right, let's say hello now and welcome back. And thank God he is with us. Dana Durnford, who is home now, his epic one-man journey all up and down the West Coast, off the West Coast to British Columbia, through just true major motion picture. He's home and he's okay. Welcome, Dana. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, and thanks. Hi, Yoshi. Hey, everybody. Hey, I wanted to add to your conversation.
I was concerned about you.
I bet you were.
Yeah,
and so was a lot of people.
Email. Yeah.
It was a lot of drama, and we've done this because we felt that urgency.
He's alive. He's alive and kicking, and there was a lot of drama. Yes, indeed.
That's good, man. That's news.
I spent Yoshi left that. I spent 2 weeks in bed, and I slept 3 times a day, and I slept all night. And then I've been uploading pictures for the last 2 weeks, but then I still sleep all day and I still sleep all night. But I'm going to be heading back out in another 7 or 8 days for a 10-day trip with 2 more people with me this time, and we're going to go pretty easy, 2 times a day, and just finish up, clean up a few cleanups.
For the benefit of the people listening to this program, can you spell out the name of your website again for everyone to look it up and see all that raw data, all that data that you collected? Yeah.
Yeah, that's an amazing amount of data that we're rolling up. Okay, and I'm just, hang on, I just wanted to make sure.
It's easy. Nuclear.
The nuclear proctologist, PROCTOLOGIST.
It's just like the doctor.
I was writing down about what Yoshi was talking about, and I didn't want to forget it. I just wanted to touch up on that, forget about it, and I'll come right back to that if you can afford me a few moments here. Look, what Yoshi was telling you and Jeff is telling you, folks, I want to put it in a little bit extra perspective from another angle, and I want you to think about the 3 meltdowns, and that Chernobyl stopped after 10 days and was equal to 400 Hiroshima bombs. But if it was like 20 days, it would have been 800 Hiroshima bombs, and et cetera, et cetera. And if it had kept going all the way up to the day, it would be equal to over almost 500,000 Hiroshima bombs.
Wow.
But it stopped after 10 days.
Yeah.
And it was only equal to 400 only, I say. But it was equal to amazing 400 Hiroshima bombs. Yeah. And the reason was because it was a chain reaction. And so it's consuming everything around it, and their atoms too, and their aerosol and atomized. But now Fukushima, and that's why Yoshi is telling you that, folks, is because Fukushima is 3 meltdowns, and then the fuel pools on top of it. This is an amazing amount of inventory, and that each reactor was holding around, and capable of anyway, 3,450 assemblies, and each assembly is 80 rods, and each rod is 18 pounds and 12 feet long. So then the fuel pools have the old cores from the reactor stored on the roof of it, and they also disappeared. Now, they sprayed salt water on it, and that created zerothol peroxide hydrogen buckyballs. And this saltwater sulfur combination of extraordinary heats phenomenon was known back in the 40s and the 50s through nuclear testing in the ocean. Now, when that reactor is melting down to the earth, folks, this is why Yoshi is so adamant about what he's saying, because he understands, and I'm sure he's explained this, but I want people to hear that metal that's falling down on top of these melted reactors were atomized in aerosol and become ionized and radiated. So it's not just the inventory from the fuel pools or the inventory from the reactors. It's also all the water they're pumping in on top of it, and that runs over, becomes ionized and radiated.
Yeah.
And that the rods, when it blew up, were spread all over the site, and they're splitting the atoms, and that they paved the harbor or poured cement over that entire harbor because they had a huge issue. A lot of that landed on the tsunami debris. A lot of the fallout, because the tsunami debris was moving at 5 to 10 miles an hour off the coastline, it was easy when the winds were west for all that radioactive fallout to start landing on that and heavy. And so that becomes highly contaminated, and that irradiates it too. But every time it rains over Japan, see, it's not just Fukushima, folks. It's not just Japan either. I mean, it's all over Canada. Every time it rains in Canada, the U.S., China, Vietnam, Alaska, it's washing back down into the coastline, into the ocean. It's being re-liberated. And when Yoshi talks about tritium, and I'll leave it on that, when Yoshi talks about tritium, look up the drinking water standards in your country for natural radionuclides. And alongside of it, you'll see what they got in there for artificial radionuclides, and they're going to be millions of times higher than what's acceptable for natural radiation.
Correct.
So you need to ask yourself those questions, folks, and not just take it, okay, but you have to say, well, why? And that's what Yoshi does so well, and Jeff does so well. The nuclearproctologist.org, folks, the front page is where I'm uploading every day. I'll be uploading all the way up until next Monday, every day. I haven't missed a day in the last 11 days.
Wow.
And then on the 16th, I put a little plug out here. On the 16th, I'll do 24-hour Fukushima, because I don't think people understand how, there's so much to be covered in this, that 24 hours is nothing to cover some of the material on this, and that's how big of an issue it really, truly is.
I mean, did you all heard, I hope all of you heard, the two stories I skimmed over at the beginning of this hour?
Yes.
Those are hugely important stories. They're symptomatic and emblematic of a catastrophe that goes beyond anything in recorded history. Anything. And some of you say, well, we're getting tired of hearing about Fukushima. Well, I'm sorry, but we're here to report reality, and that's what we do. And these two men have literally risked their lives on your behalf to help you understand what your governments have done to you. And it's not over. And you people who live along the coast, I mean, I'm 175 miles inland, nothing but mountains between me and the marine layer. So I've got at least a buffer, and I'm taking extra precaution nutritionally, as we've talked about many times. But we'll take a break and come right back with Dana and Yoshi as we continue to bring you up to date on the biggest threat you face right now. Now, next week it could be something worse. We don't know. But right now, this is the grand prize winner of death, debilitation, and disability. And we'll be back. Okay, and we're back with Dana and Yoshi. Okay, Dana, as you look back on your trip and all the data you've gathered, which you are trying to upload, where are we in terms of BC? You heard what's going on in Southern California, the Channel Islands, and the beaches, the massive death at the top of the food chain, which is very disturbing. What do you have to add to that regarding British Columbia?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. You're right. And so I was a little bit more jollier at the beginning there than I am when I talk about this particular part of the conversation, because we just done 160 days straight on the ocean, and we went through the archipelagos, 26,000 islands up here, and then we managed to get over to the coveted Queen Charlotte archipelagos. It's about 350 kilometers long for people that are not familiar, and I went through it twice. And now I went through it in the winter, so it's different going through the winter than it is the summer. But it had to be done. We had to know for sure because of what we saw. And so the original pictures uploaded the first 7 days were all laying gear around the most northwesterly point of Canada. And the underwater footage and the pictures are also up at the nuclear. And you got to put DOB, folks, THE, nuclear, then proctologist.org to get the site. And the underwater pictures were not showing any shells whatsoever, which is extraordinary all on its own. And that was the most significant thing you're going to see if you know anything about underwater, was that no mussel shells, there was no clam shells, there was no geoduck shells. There was no oyster shells. There was no scallop shells. There was no periwinkle shells, no snail shells. There was no other kind of vegetations. The urchins weren't. There was lots of urchins, though. Well, that doesn't mean they were healthy. And that's the point I'm trying to make, is that there was all this kelp there in one spot, but none of the urchins, even though there was a lot right there, and you can see it in the picture, none of them were climbing on the kelp. Now, I was an ex-commercial diver for 14 years, and one of the things I'd done was harvest urchins, and they would fall, you would knock them right off the kelp into your bag rather than try to break them off a rock. And a sea urchin is full of spines, so it can pin itself really sharply to that rock, and you only get one kick at knocking it loose. And the sea urchin is picked as a product for Japan, basically. Now, that was one of the rare products that we see in the footage whatsoever. And we see two sea anemones, and basically out of the 5,600 highly visible species that should have been there, all we seen was algae and sea urchins, and all the starfish, but we did see, not very many, didn't see any underwater. I don't think we've seen one, maybe one underwater in all the footage. Now, the footage, I put up footage today, Fukushima's underwater combo, Louise Narrows, Haida-Gwaii, BC, Canada. And so it's pictures, video, and underwater video of this unique passage. And the pictures are up there. They're the main pictures of the front page is the main pictures. And that is completely eradicated. Now, that was one of the most unique spots because it's on the back of the islands in the Queen Charlotte's and the archipelagos that are isolated from the rest of the world. And the ocean has to flood through there 4 times a day in different directions as the tide's changing. And this whole area is really all the yachts and wealthy people would get there, and it's the natives themselves. And there's before pictures of that, easy to find on the internet for anybody that wants to go look it up. It's just a documentation is what we're covering right now. We want to put up the raw files onto the internet. And so what we're looking at now shows there was no carcasses left anywhere definitively in all the pictures. And so that's an extinction event, 100%. And all we're seeing is young animals, and that any adults that we're seeing, they're lethargic and unhealthy looking, and that everything was either deformed, and it wasn't many. There was a section of starfish on the coastline, but that was only leatherbacks, or the leather starfish. And we got reports from the commercial divers that I hung out with for 6 weeks up here in the Charlottes when they were harvesting them, a lot of my old cronies, and they were perturbed and disturbed that in one area, Corona Island in the Charlottes, down not too far from the hot springs, all the starfish that they seen were just legs, no bodies. And that literally shook them, and they sought me up because they knew that's what I was doing, and it was really a poignant moment. Now, the pictures of the west coast of British Columbia itself and the 26,000 archipelagos, there is no mollusk whatsoever on the coastline, completely annihilated. There is no species out of the water. And we know in one archipelago off Spicer Island, folks, there's amazing archipelagos of islands and fjords and inlets and open ocean. And this, this is a year-round environment. You don't get ice in the wintertime or nothing like that. And the 5 starfish that I did find, every one of them were deformed. And it was the same thing on the inside passages. On the trip back down after 160 days, I counted 70 birds. I should have been counting around 5,000 per square mile. And so that is frightening, just absolutely frightening. Now, we're going to go back up and do 10 days for birds and insects and hit the outside of the west coast of the islands.
Yeah.
And we'll have 2 boats and 3 people with cameras, and just quick up and quick back, and we'll be uploading that right away.
Well, the insects are going to be particularly revealing, I think. This is going to be fascinating.
I think so, yeah. There's no smell on the shoreline. All the habitat is completely missing. There's nothing there for any migratory animals and birds to feed on or sustain themselves on. And like the aquats and all the stories you cover, a lot of these animals die off. Now, what's really staggering about everything that's up on the site already from the trip is that underwater footage, you can see all the way to the bottom, and you shouldn't be able to. because you should be full of krill that time of the year and this time of the year. And that's what sustains the mass of 5,000 birds per square mile. And everything else, all the whales and then all the fish that have to feed off the migratory fish, the migratory animals and birds that are dependent upon that. And then the shoreline and the life and the animals on the coastline in those archipelagos don't have many natural predators, and so they're very visible on the shorelines. And it was very eerie on the way back. To put it, is the point I want to make on that part was that there was nothing. It was flat calm. The only time in the whole trip it was flat, calm, and sunny was after 160 days the whole way home. I mean, it was flat for 425 miles, and there was no birds. It was weird. There was 2 birds got out of my way, and I'm traveling at around 50 kilometers an hour on a 24-foot Coast Guard.
Got it.
You know, and so I should be swerving around birds because there's so many birds. I should be just taking 10,000 pictures on the way down.
Yeah. All right. Hold on a second, Dana. And Yoshi, when we come back, let's get you to weigh in on this. What is happening over there is there was a call the day before yesterday that Fukushima, the entire province, county, prefecture, apparently should be abandoned. That was the call as I saw it. We'll get your take on that and more. And how about being a realtor on the West Coast, huh? Selling the Ocean View property? Sweating every time you talk to somebody? Hold on, we'll be right back. Okay, let's get back to Yoshi Shimatsu, who is no longer a real estate agent, representing Malibu View property.
Yeah, what Dana was saying about the mollusks, the clams and so on, very frightening because, they feed on algae, plankton, the smallest one-cell life forms. It means the ocean really is massively contaminated and right at the base of the food chain.
Well, so when you can see the bottom of the ocean through 30 feet of water or 40 feet of water, which you can apparently off Santa Barbara as well, that's an example of totally denuded ocean life all up and down the coast.
This is a total extinction event for marine life, and unfortunately it's creeping onshore, as we know, through insects, birds, sea mammals, mammals. So in other words, through the fog that's coming in, this is an extinction event. Very clear as the water there, and it should be the major, I think, national security priority right now. The United States and Canada, and maybe Mexico and other states along the Pacific seaboard. Certainly, it should be for Japan. And Japan, we know, has turned a blind eye. It's culprit on this. It's an international. The government is actually acting in a absolutely criminal manner toward the international community. It's a criminal government, which is basically nearly deliberately in violation of every kind of known, international law of sea and so on. So basically, very, very serious for Dana reports. I think everyone should look at the website, and one will know that this is not some sort of toxic algae substance, because the algae would still be alive, presumably. The toxic algae would survive. The red tide would survive. It's not a red tide event. This is definitely something on another order of magnitude, the major radiological disaster extinction event. Now, you said that this event is so great in Japan now, of course, Fukushima, that one of the stalwart cities, you got to understand, the mayor of Hirono, Satoshi Endo, said all of Fukushima and all the region affected by Fukushima should be evacuated. It's not a place habitable for children, especially for human life anymore, for domesticated animals and so on. He's talking about total evacuation. Why is this important? Because Hirono is a contractor town. This is a town totally controlled, company town by TEPCO, by Hitachi, by GE, and the mayor there is throwing in the towel. He's seeing the townspeople dying off. There's empty lot after empty lot. His homes get torn down as people die away. as the cancer rate increases, and there's no way to report. So this is a man really at the heart of it. And his town is also the host of the TEPCO thermal power plant. This is supposedly a non-nuclear oil-fired plant. The residents there told me that massive amount of nuclear work has gone on there for decades. And if you look at Google Map photos, you'll see very large parking lots where they're putting garbage bags on top of that to hide the major nuclear weapon sites that were underground there at this site. And the locals are saying, I kept saying this is an oil burning plant, and they kept insisting that there's nuclear work going on there, and that is part of the Fukushima 2 and 1 nuclear complex. This is what the locals said, that there's been plant mutations, flower mutations there for decades now. This thing obviously had a major, serious incident there, and the tsunami and earthquake hit on 3/11, and it was given the highest priority, even more than Fukushima 1, for thousands of nuclear workers. And this is the plant from which I tracked the path of the nuclear waste going out to a fishing port and then disappearing out to sea. And so this warning from a man who is an absolute insider. This is a place that got a huge sports center, a big school, everything from Tokyo Electric, and he's finally saying is uninhabited. You cannot, cavitate this place. It's killing people here. It's killing the entire population. So this is an insider, a town that's on the inside. Haramachi is another one, north of that, Miyagi Prefecture, another major nuclear weapons lab. I believe at least 1,000 nuclear workers were killed there. Locals told me much of that plant, deep as it was, much of the material was washed away as they tried to evacuate the plant.
Wow.
Terrible things. Yeah, terrible things. And if you look at Google Map, if you look at Haramachi, the thermal plant, you will see a pit there that goes down at least 10 stories to 2 massive chambers, one that's about 5 stories deep under earth, and right by the ocean there, right by the seawall, another that's about 10 stories down. Massive nuclear weapons labs, okay? And a lot of that material was either washed to sea or was deliberately put on barges and dumped into the Japan Trench, maybe even towed down to the Pacific, to the Philippine Trench and dumped there, causing these abetting these massive typhoons that are electromagnetic in nature, all of them heading toward Fukushima, and the sea currents bringing radiation to the Southeast Asia. This is crime. This is like crime on an unprecedented scale. There's never been a crime this large committed in human history, where entire regions of the world, the North American West Coast, the Arctic, the American Mid, Southeast Asia, Northeast Pacific, are being threatened with extinction. There's never been anything like this in the history of mankind. And this was deliberate, largely deliberate, because they've been honest about what they were doing and tried to contain this disaster as we advocated right away. I think the first talk I had with you is we've got to contain this disaster to this part of Japan. If it spreads, the horses will be let loose out of the corral.
Correct. And
the rest of the world will be doomed.
Yep.
I think I explained that to you several times.
You sure did.
And really despair. I went up there, tried to teach people decontamination techniques, tried to argue it's going to take 30 years or maybe even 3 generations before we can get this in. A lot of people will have to die courageously, make that choice to contain this disaster so we don't kill the rest of the world. That was the thing we had to do 4 years ago. And that was what the government deliberately did not do, okay? And the U.S. government is there, the Department of Energy, GE, Westinghouse, they're all there, the IAEA are all there complicit in this ecocidal, genocidal crime of all time, okay? Highest crime of all time. And they got to be brought to justice, because that's the last thing the last person on the planet does, is we've got to bring these fools to justice somehow. Okay, so anyway, so the extent of this, when the man is saying he needs to move his children out of there, the government, the Ministry of Education, I explained this to you when I was inside the zone 2 years ago. I said, no, 3 years, two and a half years ago, I spoke with you on phone from inside the radiation or inside Tokyo, because they cut off my calls there, explaining that the government was not allowing the children of Hirono, which has massive radioactive contamination, to attend schools in other towns or cities. They're going to take them out of enrollment and force them to come back to the local school, okay? And the townspeople were despairing. They said, how can they, it's a death sentence to bring these children back, not just for the children, but it's for the heartbreak for the parents to see their children have to live in a radioactive zone, eat radioactive food, as the Ministry of Education had ordered them to do. So the mayor finally, 2 years later, belatedly admits the policy was wrong. People must be evacuated. And there are other, I think the mayor of Tokaimura has said that even further down, a non-Fukushima nuclear site linked to the death of those 140 million whales off the coast of Japan, okay? Those sites are linked to the death of those dolphins there. He said the whole town there should be removed. That it is insane to have 14 nuclear reactors on Japan's Pacific coast. It is insane to have people live there near those plants. It is much too dangerous, and especially children must be moved out, okay? Now, the truth that we have been asserting for more than 4 years, okay, since the start of this disaster, is now being expressed by the people who were collaborators of Tokyo Electric Power Company, collaborators of the Japan's Nuclear Research Institute, people who are at the very heart of the nuclear establishment, who are receiving millions of dollars for their townships from that industry, are now coming out with the proof this has been a disaster.
You're going to, yes. You're going to see the same thing on the West Coast. All the communities along the coast in the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years are going to be doing the same kind of thing, because this stuff migrates inland.
There is a breaking point, yes.
Yeah. Dana,
there is a breaking point where you finally have to face that reality, because people around you, people you love and know, are dying. Your pets are dying.
Right in front of you.
That's when you will break and realize you have been wrong for years, and you have participated. You are partly responsible for the deaths and injury to those people, the disease that they face.
Exactly.
And then you must face up to that. That's why these officials are so broken. You know, they're broken men because they finally woke up.
They're old prostitutes. Dana, thank you very much for the report. You are one of my heroes. Always will be.
You too, Jeff.
Oh, thank you. And you take care of yourself, and we'll report here with you. Anytime you want to come on, you let me know.
Yeah, next week will be a good one before I head back out. But outside that, you guys, I'm sure everybody take care.
Okay, we'll get you on next week then. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Good to hear from you. Very good to hear from you, Dana. I'm glad you're well. Really.
For sure. Yoichi, I don't know what to say. What I started the program off with was just, a couple of pieces of an enormous avalanche of horror that we're facing. And the communities along the coast are going to be doing the same thing that the communities in Fukushima Prefecture and the others are doing right now. You'll see it.
Yeah, and as Dana told us, people along that Vancouver coast are starting to wake up to the horror of what's overwhelming them. It is sad, it is tragic, but we still must be brave, we must act, and we must do what we can.
Exactly. All right, my friend, I'll see you next week. There he goes, Yoichi Shimatsu, and we will pause on that note for 21 hours, come right back with you tomorrow night, and we will have a lot more information for you, like we try to do each day. Have a good day tomorrow. Take care, and we'll talk.